Anything as large as a trip to Alaska requires a bit of planning. In my case, it probably started when I was about 7 years old and read an article in a popular science magazine about the building of the Alcan Highway. The idea lay dormant for quite a few years, in fact, a few decades, but finally it started in earnest in January of this past year, 2013. It started when my wife said to me, we were discussing long trips, and she said, you should go because you don't know how much longer you have to ride motorcycles. It was sort of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I wanted a slugger, but on the other hand, I had gotten a hall pass. June 19th was my birthday, and I left from the Ventura County BMW store bright and early to start heading up the coast. The first couple of days were pretty much centered on getting up to Alaska quickly. Took a quick stop in front of some vineyards to take a photo of the bike. This is getting a little further up in the state of Washington, just a nice place to get your bike fixed. Aha! Over the border. International traveler. Now I was really on vacation. British Columbia was amazing. As soon as we went across the river, and I say we because I decided on a name, which I'll get to later, for my trusty steed, the scenery became really dramatic. Riding along secondary roads, whitewater alongside the road, hardly any traffic. This was going up the Cassiar Highway. More beautiful scenery. Ah yes, the trip did enjoy some great spots for eating, which I took with great relish. And yes, I did mention that it is a rainforest in the Pacific Northwest. Those billions of trees don't grow out of the ground without a lot of moisture. Actually, by the second day, I grew accustomed to it, and I was at peace with it. More beautiful scenery going up the Pacific Northwest. Aha, the Yukon. Another one of the goals that we all dream about. And no, I did not run into Sergeant Preston. It was interesting. My trip plan was really not to have a plan. I got to a town called Smithers, and I ran across a guy on a 46 knucklehead Harley who was heading up the Dempster Highway to Inuvik. He had already been up a few years earlier to the Dalton Highway to Prudhoe Bay. I thought to myself, well, if he could do it on his bike, I could certainly go up the Dempster in addition to the Dalton on my bike. Camping was pretty much by the side of the road, without a plan, without a formal layout, without having to worry about where I'm going to be making reservations. All the stuff that I had on my bike gave me ample opportunity to always find a place to stay. And there were some times when there just were no hotel rooms to be had. You come across some interesting places along the side of the road. I actually had stopped here for breakfast about 10 o'clock one morning after camping out the night before, and I ran into a rider. He's the guy on the bike on the left, and we discussed going up the Dempster Highway. And he was a local, and he said, go up to the Tombstone Park. Beyond that, it's just an endurance run. I thought that I was going to save my hero pills for the Dalton going up to Prudhoe Bay, so that's what I did. Here we are in front of the Dempster Highway sign. Another one of those must-have shots to prove that, yes, I was there. Once on the Dempster Highway, it proved to be pretty much what you could expect for the highways and byways in Alaska. Generally pretty well graded, a lot of gravel, and if you were careful and dodged the raindrops, it wasn't too bad. Certainly not all of that technical. These are mine tailings in the Yukon area, right by the Klondike, the original Klondike strike. And as I rode into town, I just saw these massive piles of stone that really caught my eye. Got to Dawson City. I was headed towards the top of the World Highway. The folks in Dawson, recognizing the tourist value of something unique, have tried to keep it looking as much as they could like the 1800s gold rush look. This building is a very important historical site. This is the site of the last operating brothel in Dawson City. This next photo shows a picture of a guy by the name of Gil from France with his GS on a ferry going across the Yukon River. This is an interesting guy. He's been traveling around the world for a couple of years, based out of France. He took some family money and decided he didn't want to be tied down to a house and family, and he was just going to travel. He's been through Southeast Asia, India, and he was the first of the many friends that I made on this trip. People on motorcycles, principally GSs, where you find out you all belong to the same fraternity. Here's a shot from the front of the ferry, looking over my handlebars, and it's kind of a daunting thing to be on this ferry where they actually go across the river kind of sideways, fighting a very strong current that I had mentioned before. Dawson City, lot of character. Dirt streets, a lot of old-time stuff, a lot of camaraderie amongst the people. Here's that shot of Dawson City where the Klondike and Yukon rivers meet. This is from an overlook on the west side of the Yukon. This is my first night in Alaska, and I was staying in the teepee behind me at a place called Thompson's Eagle Claw RV Park. Or it's actually a motorcycle RV park where this lady caters to motorcyclists. And one of the reasons why I was in the teepee, because I had not tied down my tent properly on the motorcycle, and fortunately Fairbanks was within an easy ride the next day. Going along the highway, you see some amazing sights. Here's a cow and her calf, Moose, and I guess she's trying to teach the little critter how to cross the street. Here's a close-up. The critter's eyeing me very cautiously, and as should be, because they're apparently not the brightest animals in the world and are known to walk out in front of vehicles. While I was in Fairbanks, I went to the Museum of the North at the University of Alaska. It was an incredibly eye-opening experience because I learned a lot about the development of Alaska from the prehistoric times and how the geology shaped the earth and how it got all its minerals, to, as you can see, there's some absolutely beautiful native people's art there. As far as wolves go, I didn't see any in person, but these stuffed ones were enough for me. Another sample of some of the native people's art. It's not politically correct to call them Eskimos anymore because they never used that term. And these were fans that were used in ceremonial dances. While I was in Fairbanks, I went to a place that classified itself as the world-famous cookie jar restaurant. Now, I thought my bike was a little overpacked. I stopped at a place to get fresh tires in Fairbanks, and this is what I saw. So I felt a lot better after that. Leaving Fairbanks, I hit the Dalton Highway. One of the most interesting things I would say that I remember about announcing my trip is one of the guys at the BMW shop, Cameron, as you saw in the first photo, he said to me, "Steve, around here, going to Alaska is the Holy Grail." So here I am paying homage to the Dalton Highway sign with my Venture Riders Club flag flying proudly. A little ways up the Dalton Highway, there's a place called Rosie's Cafe. This place truly does have world-famous hamburgers. They were really good. In addition to the hamburgers, Rosie's also has a collection of fantastic bumper stickers. I think these few say a lot and are always good for a laugh. Running up along the highway is just an incredible minute-by-minute unrolling of beautiful scenery. Of course, we come to the famous another picture opportunity, another Kodak moment where you have to stop and thank goodness for a tripod and self-timer because there was no one else around to take a picture of me at the Arctic Circle. This is Coldfoot. This is a place where it's a truck stop, a place to get fuel, and it's about halfway up the Dalton Highway, and there's not much before it, not much after it. I had decided not to bring my camping gear up the Dalton because I was concerned about the weight on the motorcycle, and frankly I had twisted my knee, so I was trying to be a little overly cautious. There's the famous Next Services 240 miles sign. That sign was probably more responsible than anything else for me getting an adventure rather than a standard GS. I had no problems because at the speed that I was going, I was getting about 340 miles to a tank full of gas. And as far as the gas goes, yeah, there's spots where you can't get any premium, but a bottle of octane booster in the tank bags helped a lot. This is a fairly typical view of what you'll see riding up the Dalton, the Dempster, or some of the other highways in Alaska during the summer. There are only a few months where you can actually do road construction, and they shut it down to one lane and use a pilot car. But even at that point, stopping to look at the scenery or go slowly that's the other benefit, the other side of the coin. Another beautiful scene, very common, wide riverbeds and washes and mountains. The highest point on the Dalton Highway is the crest of the Antigan Pass. Here there were a couple of real ice road truckers. Note the size of those tank trucks taking fuel back up to Prudhoe Bay. And I stopped to actually look for some Dall sheep where they're supposed to be in this area. They came over and started talking to me about my motorcycle. Turns out they were as interested in my bike as I was in their truck. Nice guys. A little further down the highway at another construction stop, one of the flag people was wearing his mosquito net. And if you look closely, you'll see all those little dots. They're not dirt on the film or on the lens. Those are genuine Alaskan mosquitoes. If there's any doubt, I took a self-portrait, and they certainly do hover around. Needless to say, I kept my helmet on an awful lot of the time. A little further down the highway, I realized that I had a flat. The rear of the bike felt real squishy. A quick examination revealed something that looked quite foreign. A little bit of work with my pocket knife and a Leatherman revealed a rather sharp stone. To see even more closely how sharp it is, you can compare that with my pocket knife. Exactly where I got the flat was on the tundra. And what's interesting here is it looks like the road is actually sloping up, but the reality is it's sloping down. That's why they call it the North Slope. You go from a several 100-foot elevation down to sea level. And if you look real closely, you can see the mosquitoes buzzing around there too, and trust me, the mosquito net was not for show. It was needed. Finally up to Prudhoe Bay. Here it is, the Arctic Ocean. And of course, I paid the $50 for the bus ride to go the last few miles into the secure zone so that I could say, yes, I've had my feet in the Arctic Ocean. This is probably the northernmost gas station in the world. As you can see, regular this past summer was $5.50 a gallon, and diesel was $5.54. It's self-serve. You go in the door, you put your credit card, select which pump you're going to use, and you fill up your machine. Not real fancy. There's no pavement in Prudhoe Bay or Dead Horse, and a lot of trucks. Here's more proof that I actually was at Prudhoe Bay. And I need to circle back and talk about the flat a little bit more. Turns out that the size of that stone shard was larger than my plug kit. So I had to find a place to get a flat fixed in Prudhoe Bay. And it was a Sunday morning. And on the trip, the bus trip to the Arctic Circle, I struck up a conversation with a guy in a Jeep. Another just out of the blue, gratuitous act of kindness, he left on my motorcycle when he drove away a can of Fix-A-Flat. Fortunately, I was able to get the tire fixed, and the guy who fixed it was a Harley rider up from Phoenix for the summer, and he refused to take any payment, but I insisted and threw some money at him. Here I'm starting back down the Dalton, and more construction's going on. The front tires on this vehicle are about as tall as I am. Here we are going up the backside of the Antigon Pass. This is very typical. You'll notice the motorcycle got a little bit dirty here. Another shot. This is a very typical scene of what you will see coming down the highway. Another shot where there's a road running alongside a river. This happened to be a side road going into Wiseman, where I spent my third night on the Dalton Highway. Another shot, wildlife, eating some aquatic plants in a shallow lake. When I got back to Fairbanks after the Dalton, I celebrated by going to a very nice restaurant, salmon, salad, and of course the ubiquitous Alaskan white ale. Headed down another highway, more construction. I took a picture of this young lady. I thought it was appropriate because I heard that they make $50 an hour. They only work 4 months a year, but they make enough money to keep them going for the whole year. Here's a close-up of what the back of the motorcycle looked like after the Dalton. And another tip which I got from Cameron before going up there was I sprayed the motorcycle when I left Fairbanks with Pam cooking oil, and that made cleanup a heck of a lot easier. Here's a panoramic shot from my phone showing the Wrangell St. Elias Wilderness off in the distance with its snow-capped mountains. Again, another little baby moose at the side of the road, kind of checking me out here, saying, what's this guy doing? Here's another of what is, I would call a typical campsite. This was at Paxton Lake, just before I went on the Denali Highway. The folks in the next campground had a couple of young kids. He came down to apologize for the noisiness of his kids, which I didn't even hear, and invited me up for some homemade reindeer sausage. Needless to say, I accepted. Another shot showing some of the scenery you see in Alaska when you're driving around. Here's a shot of an area known as Copper Center. It was near the old Kendicott copper mine. Old garage, couple own this. They're obviously Harley riders. They welcome motorcyclists to come stay there. They have a small hotel. They had an inn which burnt down. They're in the process of rebuilding it. And they invited me to set up my tent, which I did, and was on their side lawn for a couple of days exploring the area. Here's a real Alaska State Trooper. And I learned they have two kinds, those that enforce criminal and traffic laws, and the second kind is those that enforce criminal, traffic laws, and game laws. This was a game enforcing state trooper, and he was watching these folks who were fishing. You have to catch the salmon in a prescribed manner, kind of snatch a fish in the mouth with a hook while they're not feeding, or if you don't accomplish that, you have to throw them back. I did not go fishing. Just another bit of scenery, snow-capped mountains. Riding along, you come across things like waterfalls, and there's always someone willing to take your picture. More scenery. This was near a spot where I stopped for lunch. A little bit further down the road, here's another shot with the Wrangell St. Elias Wilderness, which is some number of millions of acres of just total wilderness that you can get a permit to go into and backpack if you'd like. At a point in the trip, my buddy Aaron O'Boyle, he's a commercial photographer, he came up from Vegas and brought his big cameras, and we went on a boat ride and went to the Portage Glacier, saw what was going on there. We also went to a preserve, saw some great caribou, and here I am calling him for breakfast. Here's a shot just before I went over the pass to get into Valdez. It was a beautiful picture perfect day, great scenery, great sky, warm sun. And incidentally, I should mention the temperatures for the time I was there ranged all the way up into the low 90s. It was an unusually dry and warm summer in Alaska. Right alongside of the road, a beautiful waterfall, glacial melt coming down off the mountain. When I got to Valdez, there was this restaurant. I did not go because I was not sure if it was Phu King good or Phu King bad. When I did get into Valdez, it turns out that on the other side of the mountain pass, it was pretty well socked in. Not only was it socked in, but there was a moratorium on fishing. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game declares when you can fish and when you cannot fish in response to the sonar findings of fish coming in and out of Prince William Sound. Here's another view of the harbor filled with boats. The next day I went out in Valdez and we came across these sea otters checking me out like, dude, why are you taking my photo? Here was another sea mammal. This critter's a little bit bigger. Most of you will recognize what it is when you see this tail. And this is one of those almost perfect pictures when you realize the new camera that you got for the trip doesn't have a viewfinder, and it was kind of hard with people jostling you, but you get the idea. Prince William Sound is filled with sea lions. They come for the salmon. Apparently they'll eat like 10 or 12 pounds of salmon a day, something amazing. Here's a couple of harbor seals, a mom, a pop, and if you look in the middle, there's a little baby there resting on an ice floe. And here I am in the middle of the ice field. This is just one of those must-have pictures when you go to Talking about a glacier, the area on the right, you could see, if you look closely, the glacier is actually calving. That is where a large chunk of it falls off and knocks itself down into the ocean. After the trip, here's a great view of the Valdez Harbor area and Prince William Sound. And then, of course, once again, the tripod shot where I have to get in and get myself in the photo as well. I ran into this lady first up in Fairbanks when I was getting my tires changed, and then I ran into her again down in Valdez. She's from Holland. Her name is Anna Mika, and she flew into Fairbanks, bought herself a KTM 690, and was going to ride it all through Alaska, then down through the U.S., and when she got to Miami, she was going to sell it and then go back home to Holland. This is the other side of the Valdez area, on the other side of the Prince William Sound. Here's a shot from a portion of Denali Park. It's a little out of sequence, but you get the idea. More beautiful scenery. This next shot shows a couple in the camping area of the House of Harley dealership in Anchorage, Alaska. This is one of 4 couples that I met, each with his and her motorcycles. 2 of them had a pair of 650s, and 2 of them had an 1150 GS and a 650. This couple was from Germany. I met another couple from Austria, a second couple from Germany, and a couple from England. More about the English folks later. In Anchorage, they have a weekly band and beer garden. I saw this young lady wandering around, and I invited her to join an acquaintance and myself at the table, and we started chatting. I asked what she had been doing in Alaska, and she said, well, I've been fishing for the past 3 months. I imagined her standing at the side of the stream throwing a pole in, as we had seen earlier, but no, this young lady was actually on a commercial fishing boat. I shared with her my frustration at how difficult it was to catch a single salmon and cook it, and she said, oh, just follow me out to the airport. I'm getting on the plane in a couple of hours. I'll give you one from my share of the take. Voila, I got a fresh, flash-frozen salmon, which we promptly devoured with the guys from MotoQuest. I have a couple of pictures of that coming up. Another area of interest, it was a little touristy, but in Anchorage they have a Saturday flea market where you can see everything from these beautiful photos of the aurora, which unfortunately I did not get to see because it was light all the time, to a lot of stuff that looks very Alaskan, but as you could probably figure out was made mostly in China. Back to that salmon you saw earlier, here's one of the guys at the MotoQuest shop filleting it. Here it is being cooked. And I left out the part that came after it was cooked because we were too busy eating. Another shot, just a typical beautiful Alaskan scene. Yet another glacier. By the way, there's so many glaciers in Alaska they haven't even named them all. Here's a view of some very multicolored rocks, and what's nice is that the folks in Alaska put signs up here and there so you can actually know why the different colors of rock are the way they are. Another scene with some more glaciers up on top. And this next photo, it shows me being very proud of myself for having made it onto the Denali Highway. The Denali Highway is, can't argue, one of the most beautiful places you'll ever see. There's apparently some challenge for some people on this. My bike had no problem, but my ego was kind of shattered because, as you can see in this photo, after I was there for a few minutes setting up my tripod, some young lady on a bicycle who was going across the Denali came across. Anyway, a little further down the Denali Highway, here's a shot with the ice-capped, the snow-capped mountains in the background. This says Alaska. A little further down the Denali Highway is this one's really world famous. It's called the Gracious House. It's where a lot of motorcyclists go. They'll camp out there, they'll hang out, and if you're on a smaller bike, a KTM, a KLR, or a 650, you can take some of the more aggressive off-road trails in the area. Another moose, this one indicating what they thought of my photography ability. This next photo shows another couple from Orange County, in fact. They started off on a pair of 650 dirt bikes. I think they were KLRs. And the first day, the young lady crashed, broke her collarbone, and cracked a couple of ribs. Undaunted, they weren't going to let their vacation be ruined, so they sold the two motorcycles, went back to Orange County, went on Craigslist, found the motorcycle, got up the first day as far as San Francisco. They got to the Palo Alto BMW dealer, at which point the clutch gave out, and the dealer fortunately had the clutch. He bought a Haynes manual and replaced the clutch overnight in a parking lot, and here they are up in Denali City, Alaska. Here's a shot from the inside of the Denali Park. Huge, magnificent, awe-inspiring, all the adjectives you want to throw at it. This guy crossed right in front of our bus. If you want to go into the park proper, more than a few miles, you have to go on one of their buses. They try to keep the traffic down, and whatever you do, if you see a bear, don't stick your hand out, don't offer them any food, or the bus driver will turn around and the trip will be over. And they're serious about it too. They're trying to keep the wild animals wild. There's another shot of a caribou inside Denali Park. Well, now I'm back at the House of Harley in Anchorage, and this guy I met, he's a sound engineer from the Calgary area, and he's on a 650 Dakar, and we hit it off pretty well. We compared notes on the beer. We both liked the same beer, again, that Alaskan White Ale, and we wound up riding together, hopscotching a little bit, but for 3 weeks. And super guy. Another interesting couple of guys that we met. The guy in the bright blue shirt is an engineer from Costa Rica who is a sales rep in Germany for some Costa Rican products, and that's his nephew standing next to him. And they were on a Ural sidecar. His comment to me was he needed to get away from the women in South America, get out from under their skirts and see the world. This was another lunch spot. It's tough, but someone has to sit down and eat lunch in beautiful locations like this. There's another view of the same valley, and down in the lower right, up at the top of the lake there, that's actually the Portage Glacier. Here I am back with my pal Dave. We were camping here at Captain Cook State Park, which is up in the northwest corner of the Kenai Peninsula. We went out without any plan, and we stopped around 7 o'clock and asked some locals where's a good place to camp, and they sent us to their campsite. Here's another view of the camp. We have the fire going, and just had a great time. This location is the westernmost highway in the North American continent. Just a few yards beyond this was a place where people would take their boats on their trailers, and a large tractor would drag it down the hill into the ocean and then bring the trailer back up. Land's End is a hotel at the very end of the Homer Spit in Homer, Alaska. I'll show you another photo a little further down of what the Homer Spit actually is. World famous Salty Dog Saloon on the Homer Spit. This next shot shows the interior, where you cannot find a place to put your dollar bill with your name on it, but people get creative. Homer calls itself the halibut capital of the world. This was one day's catch off a boat. Homer is a fishing village, lots of fishing boats. There are also a lot of bald eagles in Homer. This one was perched on a tree right above my campsite. This is on the way to Seward, Alaska. It's around the other end of the Kenai Peninsula. And again, just more beautiful scenery. This is a puffin. It's a bird that doesn't fly very well. It's seen a fair amount in Alaska. This was in an aviary at a Ocean Critters Institute, whatever they called it. There's another ocean critter. This is on the street in Seward, Alaska. Behind me is the inlet, and across the street are folks living, and these were RV sites, and I think it was like $10 a night. There's a great brew house there, and this is their sign to the restroom. Again, you're in a fishing area with lots of boats. When I left Seward, I headed up some side roads and got to Hope, Alaska. Again, this was just a place where I conveniently stopped for lunch. Most of the time, my lunches would be some supplies that I picked up, like a roll and some cheese. Here I am in front of a building that was built in the 1800s. This is also in Hope, Alaska. This is the general store. It's been in operation and still is for quite a few years. Another scenic byway in the Kenai Peninsula. Here's the couple from England. You may have seen photos of this motorcycle in a magazine. These folks have been on the road for 3 years. The curved top panel has some solar panels which supplies current when the engine's not running to the refrigerator they have mounted above the front wheel. We rode together for a few days and went through an area known as the Haines Pass. Beautiful scenery, as you can see. This next shot shows a comparison between the two bikes. The couple, Kevin is his name, he made all of the panniers and boxes himself. Back in Anchorage, went to the Anchorage Museum and saw some incredible native art. This is actually a rain slicker. They've been making them like this for hundreds, if not thousands of years for all we know. It's actually seal gut, tightly stitched together, and then decorated with some feathers. It's waterproof and very light. Here's another shot of the House of Harley camping area. You can see there's the corner of a tent on the right, a couple of picnic tables, big grassy area. The 3-story building in the background is actually the Harley dealership. We'll see some more of that in a bit. This is the famous Russian River, where at the right time of the year it'll be teeming with salmon swimming upstream to spawn. When Aaron, my buddy, was in town, we took a flight over to a preserve area. This was the first day of the flight. It was about an hour flight, and we had to turn around because it was socked in. Not to lose some photo ops while we were together, we went to the local dump and shot some photos of this bald eagle. Here's a shot of the plane that we actually went up on. Here we are flying over the Clark Preserve, another multi-million acre preserve with only one small postage stamp of private land that was grandfathered in. Here's where we landed on a lake. Here's a shot. They've turned it into a lodge. And to get to these places is not particularly cheap. Our airfare was $600 each, but if we wanted to stay overnight, it would only be an additional $1,500. The morning was spent on what typically is called at Lake Mead a party boat. It's a pontoon boat with a large flat platform and a canopy up above, and we went along the banks of the lake looking for bear. There we got one right there, and here's another shot of the critter. And here's me with Erin's camera, and we got some really great photos, but that's another slideshow. Here's another view of the lodge area and one of the float planes. Coming back, we actually landed in the lake in the foreground, and above that, going out into the inlet, you can see what's called the Homer Spit. That strip of land was actually deposited millennia ago by glacial movement and dropping of sand as the glaciers expand and recede. The Russians originally had Alaska. They originally owned it, and there are still remnants of very tight-knit Russian Alaskans who won't give up their own old ways, and here's a Russian Orthodox church. Back at the Portage Valley, glaciers, streams, terrifically beautiful. My friend Erin next to an iceberg when we were on our little boat ride. Here's a caribou walking through a puddle. There's a Yogi Bear. Here's Bambi, and another caribou. Well, there's plenty of wildlife in Alaska. Here's just a shot, just an everyday shot. This was just from our campground in the Portage Valley. There is a railroad that runs from Seward up to Fairbanks. You never know what you're going to see in Alaska. This woman hardly spoke English, but she invited me to take a picture of her in her Hmong costume. This looked very delicious, interesting kind of mushroom. However, nature usually warns you with bright color, so I didn't think it was advisable to eat. Oh yeah, another couple of moose. These were just strolling around near the airport in Anchorage. Finally got time to have a sign made with the name of my motorcycle. Going through the rain in the Pacific Northwest, I decided to name her Miss Adventure. Here we are back at the Harley dealership. They were having a party because a group of them were leaving the next day to go to the 110th anniversary of Harley Davidson. They made a media event out of it because they would be, I think, the furthest riding group to go to Milwaukee. This young lady is actually the owner of the Harley dealership. She bought it from her dad. She's an MBA graduate, and she owns the Harley dealerships in Anchorage, Visalia, and one other town down on the Kenai Peninsula. Here's another shot of the Harley party. You'll note I had put my bike conspicuously at the front so everyone could see what a real motorcycle looks like. Some more Harleys. Actually, everyone was very nice there. We had a good time. There was good-natured ribbing, but we all ride on two wheels. There was a pinup girl contest at the Harley party. Across the parking lot from the Harley dealership is the MotoQuest, international headquarters. It's a little motorcycle shop where they keep their bikes in great shape, and I have to say, I would never hesitate to recommend this place to anyone who didn't have the time to ride up and back but did want to ride in Alaska. This photo in front of the MotoQuest shop was going to be my last photo actually in Anchorage, because from this point I was headed south. It was the beginning of the ride home. I had parted ways with my friend Dave, who was heading up to Denali. But as you can see, I met up with Dave a few miles down the road. He had changed his mind and was heading south, so we decided to ride together for a while. He saw how I had my bike so heavily loaded with all the stuff that I had gotten, plus what I originally had, and there's also a barbecue hanging off the side of it. So he acknowledged that that was the supreme bike. He only said if it were his, he would take the MI off the Miss, and it would then be known as the SS Adventure. Cute. This is a shot from where I next camped in Haines, Alaska. Here's another shot with my tent up and the motorcycle in it. Again, just drop dead gorgeous, beautiful place, fun riding, great people. A few miles up there was a lake and people were salmon fishing. Not only were people salmon fishing, but the bears were salmon fishing. It was raining and dark, and I had my camera on full digital zoom, so it's a little grainy, but you can see Mama has a salmon in her mouth and is bringing it up onto the bank for the little cub. And here's the cub hopping in. Quarter of a mile up the river, there's Papa Bear. And if you look closely, you can see he has a transponder on him. The wildlife people keep pretty close tabs on the regular residents. Here's the queue to get onto one of the ferries, and I had met these people in Anchorage and then ran into them again in Haines. Actually, they wound up in the campsite right next to mine. That's Eckhart and Christina from Germany. The kind of rapport that you have with people when you're on the road, if they were to call me or vice versa, I were to call them. If I were in Germany, they would always have a place to stay. I would always have a place to stay. It's that kind of good-natured feeling that you get when you're out. Someone said to me, when you're out by yourself, which I was, you're not with anyone, but you're never alone. This is what they call a ferry in Alaska. This was actually the boat coming into port prior to me getting on it for the last portion of my trip from Alaska. A couple of quaint houses in Haines, Alaska. Haines is also known for its eagle population. That guy got a little camera shy when I clicked my shutter. And here I am. Here's the queue to get on the ferry. I was first in line, and right behind me pulled up two guys on a couple of GSs. And it turns out for the next 4 nights and 3 days, we camped right next to each other, ate our meals together, talked about motorcycles, life, and everything else. There were some interesting types on the boat as well. I've heard of cars having a trunk, but this is the first time I've actually seen a motorcycle with a trunk. Here we are inside the ferry. We're tying our motorcycles down. The ferries have some straps, but you're well advised to bring a couple of your own. Here's my tent and the tent that was shared by the two young guys on the GSs. We've actually taped them down to the upper deck, and you could see the wind was blowing. The first night I actually thought I was going to lose the tent. After that, we had rain, but not that kind of wind. The Alaska Marine Highway follows the same route through the inland passage as do the cruise ships. So you essentially get to see the same scenery for a lot less money and not have to keep practicing willpower at the endless buffets of food. Here are my buddies from the trip. Greg is on the left and Justin is on the right. These guys are both software engineers. The guy on the left works for Apple. And they got 2-week hall passes from their girlfriends, and they made it up to the Arctic Circle and then we're coming back. It's a quick trip, not one that I would personally recommend because I found after my first few days on the road that not having a schedule, and if you wake up and it's raining, turn over, go back to sleep, wait for the rain to pass. Get to see the local area. Another view from the ship coming into one of the ports of call. One of the fabulous sunsets that you can see. Now, not everyone on the boat was a motorcyclist. Some of them used it for transportation and could be a little hippie-ish. Here we are in the cafeteria of the boat where myself, Justin, Greg, we met up with a young lady named Katie who had been working as an attorney for a year in Alaska and was now heading towards her new job in South Carolina. Here's a shot of the deck as I was leaving once we arrived in Bellingham, Washington. The only thing left is my bag with the tent in it. Everyone else has pretty well cleared out. Once I hit the Washington coast, there was this beautiful scenery, a lot of rocks. Here's another shot of it here. And this pretty much was the Washington and Oregon coastline, which I did take the coast route going down. Back in California, sort of a bittersweet reuniting with my home state. Took a trip down the Avenue of the Giants where these redwood trees are just, I had forgotten how big they are. Up to 300 feet tall, 2,000 years old, and of course you have to do the self-timer shot with yourself in there as well. Jumping off the coast route and back onto the main highway, coming over the Golden Gate Bridge, it was a sharp jolt back into the reality of urban traffic. I spent the night in the Mountain View area where my daughter lives and met Greg, the software engineer from Apple, up at Alice's restaurant. And although you could get anything you wanted, I did have a BMW burger. So I finally made it back home. 10 weeks, 10,000, almost 300 miles. Had a terrific time. Here's a screenshot from my InReach, which gave out a bleep every so often so people could track. There are a couple of little breaks in there. The first one on the inland route that was going up, that's when I forgot to turn it on one day. And then there's a break on the way down. That's where it ran out of batteries and forgot to check it. So you can see that the route that I took covered quite an area, from the lower part of California up to the most point you can ride to in Alaska. Well, so what was the sum and substance, the overall, what were my feelings? One of the favorite questions that people seem to ask is, what was the best part of the trip? Well, that requires a little bit more. This next photo will show you my overall feelings of the trip. Yeah, I loved it. But frankly, the best part was meeting people, learning about people from other cultures, other parts of the world, enjoying their company, spending time with strangers who would gratuitously give you a salmon, a can of Fix-A-Flat, some reindeer sausage, company, a beer. It was a great experience. Sure, the sights were amazing. nothing like I had ever seen before. The riding was magnificent, all kinds of terrain, everything from narrow two-track dirt roads to super highways, to the challenge of riding up the Dalton where they'll be speeding along at 70 miles an hour on two-lane blacktop, and then suddenly it ends and goes into soft gravel. I also learned that less can be more. I don't need all the benefits of living in a big house. After a few weeks, I really enjoyed being in the tent, having a cot and a sleeping bag, eating a minimal amount of food, and the experience of living outside, living in the environment. It was invigorating. It was a youthful experience, something that made me feel much younger than these gray hairs would have you believe. I learned a new respect for the environment, a respect for the people, the native peoples, who lived without iPhones, without internet, without motorcycles. They hunted, they gathered, they lived off the land, and they did it successfully for thousands of years. There's a joy in this kind of trip, something that's hard to relate. It's something you have to experience. I would encourage you not to overplan. I would encourage you not to worry about what the right time is, what the right tires are, what the right motorcycle is. Just go do it. Something like this is an epic life experience. And for the final question, if you had it to do over again, what would you do differently? The answer is, I'd leave sooner.